Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Silvia Marquez Pease from Florida International University in Miami. And we are in a FIU Coil project collaborating with Central University of Technology in Free State, South Africa. This project is called Who Women Are, a Context in the Arts. As you can see here, I prepare a map for you to visualize where we're at and where is our collaborating team in Free State. My talk today will be about the countries in Latin America. And here's a map of the different countries that constitute what is called Latin America. When we talk about citizenship, the public agenda assumes as such the right to transversal participation and equal access to information, and with it, the right to the recognition of people as active subjects, politically and socially, in the diversity of communities and public spaces, respecting individualities and coexistence within the community. However, up to this day, this granted right does not necessarily have its alleged equality of conditions. The civic social construction has generated serious differences between people of certain categories and subcategories that depend on origin, socioeconomic situation, gender, and sexual self-determination, religion. That is, it denies the diversity in its own existence. For women, there is an overload that comes from an apprehended and patriarchal gender condition, which reveals them as one of the most fragile groups. It is in this sense that a different perspective is essential. Visibility is essential. It is essential that public institutions allow themselves to question the established stereotypes in order to create new narratives that may influence the collective imagination in pursuit of a long overdue recognition of women. This requires, in the first place, a recognition of their historical position of inequality in the various dimensions and levels of coexistence within the domestic, labor, social, work-related, and political spheres. In 2021, at least 4,473 women were victims of femicide. This is only one of the many statistics that we can find. So just that, this represents at least 12 women per day who die violent gender-based deaths in the region. I argue that the interdisciplinary artworks emerging from a political interest to a denunciation of the feminine oppression within a patriarchal structure are interconnected with a new feminine identity and visibility. That is, these artworks have the potential or capacity to advocate for women's human rights, improving their visibility and quality of life. In my discussion, visibility means that women are not only seen, but rather they are heard and respected and can aspire to livable lives. That is why we will be examining the work of Latin American and South African women artists, in my case, the Latin American, as an inspiration to embark into our own creative project. Here's the first artist that I'd like to share with you. Cecilia Vicuña. She was born in Chile and often described as naive or even primitive style. She employs these flat and simple compositions characterized by the inclusion of a narrative through the representation of objects that carry a strong symbolic reading, a synthesis of influences that brings together pre-Columbian, indigenous, or popular arts and folklore with her knowledge of European poetry and painting. This work dwells in the not yet, the future potential of the unformed, where sound, weaving, and language, which were some of her techniques, interact to create new meanings. She talks about precarious means prayer, uncertain, exposed to hazards, insecure, and prayer, according to her, is change and the dangerous instant of transmutation. She talks about the desire as an offering, and the body is the only metaphor. And as if you can see in all the panels in this piece, which is a biombo, casita para pensar, que situación real me conviene, translated little house to think what real situation suits me, that she did in 1971. You can see all these different characteristics depicted here on this wooden panel, painted with oils. It talks about this idea of home and how precarious this home is, and how can, through the depiction of imagery and symbolism, narrate the story of women within that home and the role of women within the whole home. She's quite an interesting artist. And of course, we're going to go through several artists today. We're going to look at several artists, but then you're welcome to go back and research more in order to find inspiration to your work. What I try to do is pick different artists and different mediums, just to let you know that you may use any medium to express a topic of interest. Wanda Pimentel is a Brazilian artist. She was a painter based in Rio de Janeiro, and her work is distinguished by a precise, hard-edged quality, encompassing geometric lines and smooth surfaces in pieces that often defy categorization as abstract or figurative. The ones that we're looking at here is the Serie Envolvimento, 2012, oil on wood. And the one on the right is Do Camino a lo Sobrehumano, that she did in 1965, and it's oil on wood. And as you can see, in both instances, she is depicting areas within the house or chores within the house that represent women and their role in society. Especially, well, she continued until she passed in 2019. In one of the interviews, Pimentel said, "My studio is in my bedroom. Everything has to be very neat. I work alone. I think my issues are the issues of our time. The lack of perspective for people, especially women, their alienation. The saddest thing is for people to be dominated by objects, by things," close quote. Her work is quite interesting, and I want her to keep her in mind in your research. And here's another artist from Brazil. Her name is Rosanna Paulina. She's a contemporary artist, and this installation caught my attention. She created this installation called Parede da Memoria, or Wall of Memory. It depicts 11 of her family photographs that are repeated throughout the panel, forming a set of 1,500 parts. The photos are distributed as amulets in a format, small parts used as protective amulets, the amulets for religion purposes and of African origin. The wall turns into a poetic denunciation of the invisibility of Black men and women who are not perceived as individuals. So when you walk into the room, the 1,500 pairs of eyes are set on the wall facing the viewer. And so that way they're ceased to be ignored. This was part of the exhibit at the Pinacoteca of São Paulo in Brazil. Sorry, there you go. Rosanna Paulina, interesting work. Doris Salcido is another artist from Latin America. She was born in Colombia. She creates powerful installations that discuss the themes of mourning, memory, and loss. Part of her practice is to displace objects from their familiar setting to illustrate absence, not being present, and how the emptiness that is left by someone affects relationships between people, communities, and more broadly in society. This work that we're seeing here, it's called Atrabiliarios, was done in 1996. It's drywall, shoes, cow bladder, and surgical thread. Salcedo highlights the conflicts and violence in Colombia, the migration crisis and war, always investigating the disappearance of loved ones. Madeleine Greisenthal writes about Salcedo, and she says, quote, "At the heart of Doris Salcedo's work is the visual articulation of that which is so often acknowledged or made invisible: the victim of violence, the refugee, the immigrant, the decimated domestic sphere, the disregarded social context. Salcedo fashions a space in which these realities can be both recognized and legitimized," close quote. So again, let's note that we have seen different techniques to interpret conceptual art. So in your project, I want you to think about that. What is the material that we're using, and how does that material that carries a meaning influences the work that we're doing, whatever we want to say, conceptually speaking. Here's Maris Bustamante from Colombia. She's a Mexican conceptual artist. Oh, well, I guess she also worked in Colombia, but she's Mexican by birth. Bustamante is an essential figure of feminist art in Latin America, and her work combines the use of humor and irony with questioning patriarchal and hierarchical structures in society. As you can see here on her work, it says, "El pene como instrumento de trabajo para quitarle a Freud lo macho." The penis as a work instrument to get rid of the macho in Freud. This was exhibited at Mexico City, and her contribution to art also comes from teaching and writing about art. And she influenced many women that came after her because of this, of her approach, which, as you noticed, is completely different from the others. Her approach is ironic, direct, and to the point, and very, in a way, well, direct and ironic, is using this humoristic approach to art, to conceptual art. Next, we're going to look at the work of Nicola Costantino. She's an Argentine artist. Her view and as a feminist artist brings together the personal and the political, and she also personifies historical figures. The wide range of themes in her multidisciplinary production include her own identity as a woman, ethics and aesthetics, historical revisionism, stage, sets, and theater in general. Costantino's approach was metaphorically suggestive of the personalities of Evita from an emotional and intimate point of view, depicting her ups and downs, questioning her quality of life. So as you can see here, this Eva Los Suenos was exhibited at the 55th International Art Exhibition in La Biennale di Venezia in 2013. And she personifies Evita Perón and is a mixture of different videos and her own, that are projected to show the different aspects of Evita and to question her quality of life, to question the many roles that she had. This work is also a metaphor or metamorphosis that dislocates forms and challenges the boundaries where one subject defines itself in relationship to another or others. It is precisely these forms of relations situated in the in-between that mediate our understanding and interpretation of the world. This work is done by Las Tesis, which is contemporary group. The work is called Un violador en tu camino, a rapist in your past. And as I said, was conceived by them, by Las Tesis, which is a collective in Chile. The first intervention of Las Tesis was in Valparaíso, and it was extraordinary, massive, and thanks to the viral effects of social media, propelled over 400 performances of protests worldwide in 3 months. The collective, from left to right, are Daphne Valdez, Sibila Sotomayor, Paula Cometa, and Lea Cáceres. They come from a theater background, and they were able to work with performance, the body performance, choreographies, and also were very inspired by the anthropologist Rita Segato. So, whose research in La Guerra contra las Mujeres, her book in 2017, condemns the judicial system, accusing it of being blind to the systematic nature of gender violence in the region. Las Tesis mentioned, quote, "For us, there is a strong union between art and activism. Art is the language that we have selected to express ourselves and work." So, Un violador en tu camino, which is the name of the performance, A Rapist in Your Path, engages women in an open, participatory way to agonistically resist, disrupt, and construct feminine affects and political identities. During the act, the feminine bodies chant and dance choreographically, engaging in gesture reconstruction of the police abuse of women. And this way, they confront the state and proclaim agency, reclaim their space. Their desire is to trace the past and the present, proposing a rethinking of the feminine narrative from a shifted position. The core of this feminine performance and their, as we just mentioned, sole authorship of women artists does not deny the discourse of objectification and the disruption of the patriarchal hegemonies. Yet it becomes evident that in Un violador en tu camino, the agonistic and technological social media components play a key role in the interference and articulation of meanings. And as I just mentioned, the social and the viral dissemination continues, and this became a transnational performance that mutated in different languages and different priorities in their gestures as it moved throughout the world. Now we're looking at the work of Maria Scafati from Argentina. Something Broke. This is an installation that she created in Buenos Aires, the one on the left, and then took the same installation to New York. The interesting aspect is this process that she brings. It's a hand-painted, brilliant red posters that flood the walls paved with a powerful monochromatic experience. These posters that are created by the artist's own handwriting engage the participant in a public, intense aesthetic experience of personal information that concerns the artist and everyone else, especially those that live in Argentina. But the message is also universal because the message demands a reaction. So as I said, the original one was in Buenos Aires and then the other one in New York, and they both describe a social cultural situation, and through the sensorial experiential environments of bold colors and messages, invite the participant to engage, feel and reflect upon the significance of these pertinent messages inspired by a life of growing up in Buenos Aires. So her work shocks the participants with the color and this monochromatic perception, with the intensity and the typography in white, just like signages, inundate the entire space and overwhelm the participant with an excess of colors and words. So these are handwritten poster signages, creating pleas for action, combining ideas of the social context and the relational features of the language, especially the social context for Argentinian women, just like her, who are part of the society in crisis, but those same issues could exist somewhere else. So again, Mariela Scafati from Argentina. And now we're going to look at the work of Mariana Lamo, also from Argentina, Invocar el Acto. It's an installation done in 2022, a very contemporary work. And the Argentine artist Luciana Lamo's work explores the duality and plasticity of materials, the gestural performative aesthetic experiences that invoke and provoke acts. Her large-scale sculpture installations and performances use materials such as metal and wood, testing preconceived ideas and inviting the viewer participant to experience an aesthetic understanding through sensory perception and ontological signification. When confronted with her large artworks and installation, there is an inherited tension because they depict conflicting forms and association of heaviness and lightness, solid and pliable, masculine and feminine, strong and delicate. These dualities, light and dark, static and dynamic. A vital part of her projects is to create art that unsettle categorizations and assumptions by orchestrating a dialogue between the self, the aesthetic art, and reality. So, Invocar el Acto, this installation, is not only gestural, it's also relational, because it engages the participant by contact, movement, and tactility, and invites them to a gestural relationship with themselves and with these mobile wooden structures. So the body, upon entering the installation, needs to interact with these structures. Well, this has completed the first section of my videos, and it will give you ideas of how do contemporary artists, women artists in Latin America since 1970s till the present time, how do they react to the different social issues? And I hope this serves as an inspiration for you to work on the assignment and understand, again, as I mentioned before, that first the concept can be resolved using different techniques and venues. Thank you.